as much as people like to say, oh, America is a laughing stock, America, this, blah, 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 at the end of the day, these people are always on the edge of their seats seeing what's happening with important issues in the country. That's the reality. Hello. Hope y'all doing well. I'm just out here enjoying this nice weather. Just finished working and enjoying this weather while I can, but let's talk. Oh boy. All right, so cancel culture is doing its stupid thing, right? These social justice warriors think that they are doing a good thing by tearing down statues and history and all that stuff. It's a real dumb idea. It's a bad idea. And let me explain why. Here's why it's a bad idea to take down statues of like Robert E. Lee, other prominent people of the past, George Washington and stuff. Like George Washington is it's obvious, like come on. He's basically the father of the country. Come on now. This is so dumb. Robert E. Lee, famous general, right? Very famous general. Of course, he was not the ideal general, right? He was known for leading the Confederacy Army, the Confederate Army, right? Just because he did that does not mean that he should be removed. Doesn't mean he should be removed. So the reason why it's a bad idea to tear down all these statues and stuff, it's a bad idea because what you're doing is effectively removing the past. That's the problem. That's the bare, simple, easy problem. You are removing the past. That's bad. Why is removing the past bad? Well, this is why. Let's go to the logic. History is important. It's important. It's very important. You can learn a lot from history. A whole lot. You can learn a lot of things from history. You can look back at history and see the bad things and the good things. Whether good or bad, history is history. It's important to remember that. The whole point, really, is to not repeat history again. That's the point. I can't remember the quote right off my head, but I'm sure you've all heard it. Those who are, who just don't recognize history are doomed to repeat it. I'm paraphrasing, but you know what I'm talking about. To remove history, it leaves you open to entering or going through the pitfalls that others have gone through in the past. Part of good wisdom, there's intelligence and wisdom, and honestly, they're really two different things. There are a lot of intelligent people who are just no good, but wise people. And I prefer to be in a group of wise people than really intelligent people. And wisdom is really, honestly, wisdom is simply knowing what other people know or have done and living accordingly. There are some things that I know that people did in the past, and I therefore now know to not do those things, right? Like you see what people of older age have done, some of the mistakes they've made, right? And as a result, I now know that I probably should not do some of those things. I'm better for it now. I'm wiser for it now. That's what wisdom is. Wisdom is basically taking history and learning from it, in such a way that it affects your life in a positive manner. And so these statues, unfortunately for a lot of these people, only make them think about racism. It only makes them think about the past, right, in a negative light. People who take our country, what it took for this country to be what it is now, take history for granted. And you might say, well, just removing the statues is not a big deal because the history books will always be there. Well, it's not the same. For one, we live in a culture, a society where people couldn't care less about opening a book and reading it, right? I'm all about my Netflix or, playing a video game or something like that. But in reality, this is the entertainment generation. It's been that way for a while. People are more interested in trends and getting on Twitter and, getting all the likes on social media than they are about looking into the past, reading a good book, right? Reading historical information. Failures or non-failures, it's important to remember these people. It's super important to remember that. The world looks to America as much as people like to say, oh, America is a laughing stock, America this, blah, 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 blah. At the end of the day, these people are always on the edge of their seats seeing what's happening with important issues in the country. That's the reality. What happens in America, in a lot of ways, affects the rest of the world. This country has more freedom, more liberty. It's built on a constitution that allows its citizens to have more freedom than basically any other country on the planet, period. So people can look from, England or wherever and say, oh, you Americans with your guns, you don't really need all those weapons. Are you so insecure that you really need those? They can say all that, but at the end of the day, they're going to keep an eye on our country. Whereas with the other way around, to be honest, we really don't keep much of an eye on theirs. That's the truth. American culture has influenced so many countries over the years. Even now, there are young people in Japan who are so influenced by American culture that they dress like they're people from the 70s. They dress like people from different decades in American history, no less. You should look this up. There's a couple of there's some documentaries. There's a couple of documentaries on YouTube of Japanese fashion trends and stuff. And a lot of the time, it's basically lifted from American culture. You look at it in India, you look at just the influence of Hollywood alone, right? This is one aspect of America's influence in the world. And it has affected practically every single country on the planet, right? So surely you can see what I mean about America basically having everyone's eyes. Regardless of what's happening. If America goes down, the rest of the world is screwed. This is something else that we really know, right? If American liberty, us and our guns and our freedom and all that stuff, if that goes by the wayside, then other countries are going to start sweating. Because they know that if America goes down, other countries are going to be negatively affected by it. Not positively, but negatively, right? So anyway, our country is amazing. Hands down. There's no better place for me personally. No other place. If people who have come from nothing can reach the amount of success that they have in this country, tons of millionaires started with nothing, right? That's some straight up American dream stuff, right? It's still happening even now. There's no other country where I would rather be as a black person also. Forget the narrative that's in the news, and all the trending blah, blah, blah. Don't forget about being led by the nose with all this manipulative stuff and selective info, right? Being in another country, living in another country, being a citizen of another country can be really bad news for you, depending on certain aspects of your life. If you were a gay person in Saudi Arabia, you'd be in big trouble. You get killed. That happens a lot. Gay people are heavily persecuted there, right? A woman in Saudi Arabia, they're basically, in a lot of ways, second-class citizens. They just got the ability to drive not too long ago. Something that we've been used to for so long. You know what I mean? And so this anti-American sentiment that we have right now is really built on ignorance, stupidity, and just emotional takes, and so the ironic thing about it all, this is what's super ironic about it, is that we have right now, in this very moment, we have kids in college, black kids, who are demanding segregation. We have black kids in school who are demanding segregation right now. the same type of kid that wants statues removed are the same type of kids right now who are asking to literally repeat some of the worst ideas of history. Marxism, I mentioned that in the last video, right? It's so plain and there, yet people just don't really care much for history. And honestly, a lot of that is just because they only hear the bad stuff, you know? I can't remember if I mentioned this in a previous video or not, but, you know, a lot of the founding fathers did in fact own slaves, but not all of them. Sam Adams, John Adams, they did not. Thomas Jefferson, being a tremendous figure in American history, had his flaws by being a slave owner. But you know what? On his deathbed, he basically freed his slaves and gave them his property. You know, stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that they were free from then on out and they just had their own property and everything was fine. Obviously not. But stuff like that is not taught. It's not. You know, there was contention among the founding fathers about the slavery issue. The Constitution in and of itself spoke contradictory. Is contradictorily a word? The Constitution itself is contradictory to owning slaves. They knew this. It was a matter of time until it basically had to be redone, or they would have to free the slaves. And so there's papers where these important figures in history are talking about this issue and how it needs to be done. Of course, it could have been done much sooner, right? Obviously. But nevertheless, it's not as simple as a bunch of, you know, racist white men who are just sitting there happily with their slaves, and then Abraham Lincoln shows up, right? It's not that simple. Like, it really isn't. And so, yeah, pulling down these statues, these kids barely care to read as it is, you know. It's a terrible idea. The whole point is to learn from these people. That's the point. And to rob them of the achievements that they had is also wrong. Like, the idea that since you own slaves at one point, you have zero credit in this country is ridiculous. That's dumb. If it weren't for those slave-owning white people, I wouldn't be here, right? And funny enough, there are tons of people in Africa right now that wish they could be here. That's the truth. That's the truth. So there's a lot to unpack in that. Just talking about the founding of our country and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, the abolition of slavery was just a matter of time. It was completely incompatible with the idea that every human being is made in the image of God and therefore has certain inalienable rights. That's it. I mean, that's it. It would not have lasted. It would not have lasted. And they were aware of that. A lot of them were. Some were still scoundrels, to be clear, but they knew that this ideal would also reveal a lot of their own sins. So anyway, cancel culture is real dumb. I wanted to mention this though. The Redskins, you know, the Redskins logo is about to be changed. People say, "Oh, it's cultural appropriation. It's wrong to have a Native American man on there. That's wrong. That's so racist. We need to remove it." And so the Redskins, of course, because at the end of the day, a lot of business owners are cowards because money owns them rather than the other way around. And they're going to change it. But you know what's really sad about this? Let me tell you what's really sad about this. One sec. All right, I'm back. What's really sad about this is that the logo was originally designed by a Native American dude. And it was also at a representation of a tribe. Walter Wetzel, I believe, for the Blackfoot tribe. Look this up. It's people are talking about it for sure. But yeah, made by a Native American, with pride for his tribe, and that's being removed because it's racist. I mean, go figure. Virtue signaling and ignorance is a nightmarish combination. It really is, man. Like, holy crap. This is ridiculous. It did not occur to these people who have whined and cried about this that maybe, just maybe, it wasn't racist. And even, let's say it was, right? Let's say that it was in some way just a careless thing to have. You were in a bad way if you think that imagery like this should basically be removed because it seems racist. Like, that's just the truth. That's just the truth. The Aunt Jemima syrup, like, straight up, the idea of Aunt Jemima originally started with some racist stuff. Like, that was some I forgot. It was hold on one second. It's on the tip of my tongue. Minstrel shows. They would have black people with it was white folks with black paint on their face and like the big red lips. Like, it was clearly meant to be a derogatory thing, right? And Aunt Jemima was just basically an ignorant woman who was in the kitchen, ignorant kitchen house Negro, you know what I mean? The origins are super racist, obviously. Like, that's bogus. That's super bogus. But you know what? Since then, a black family has long enjoyed basically being an Aunt Jemima character. And now the legacy of the woman who is now currently the face of Aunt Jemima. And again, remember, this is the more how would I say? This is the more respectful version, right? Like, they're just gonna kill it entirely. And now they're sad. And so now we got a black family who's really sad to see a legacy of sorts go. Granted, it's racist origins. That's not the case now. Just the name is, okay, to be clear. And now we have the Redskin logo being killed. NFL Redskins, sorry, it's done. It's just going to happen soon. And now a Native American tribe is at a loss. They are sorrowful about that. Just a lack of knowledge, man. Like, the Bible says a very specific spot in the Old Testament. It's not for everybody, obviously. But God says that people perish for a lack of knowledge. If you don't know what you need to know, you're bound to do stupid things and make stupid mistakes. And the crazy thing about it is that we're going to make mistakes, right? Everybody does. People make mistakes. This cicada is going crazy. Let me hurry up and finish what I'm going to say. But to make a mistake when the info is there, it's available, it's crazy to be so zealous about this stuff and so ignorant. It's immensely dangerous. At any rate, that's it for this video. I'd appreciate a thumbs up very much. Let me know what you guys think about that, man. Redskins gone. That's a shame. I always thought that was a really cool logo, but hey, now it's gonna die. That's done. And real talk, I low-key bought an Aunt Jemima syrup bottle to keep. For real, seriously. Like, it would be different if it was like just purely offensive, like blackface, big red lips on the bottle or whatever. Like, that's just bogus. But it's not that. It's just a nice black lady. She didn't even have the head dressing on anymore. You know what I mean? Like, it's... all right, I'm out. Y'all be safe. See y'all in the next video.